Welcome to this episode of the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Today, my guest is an award-winning international vocalist performer, Whitney Marchell Jackson. She has performed throughout the world with some of the most iconic musicians, performers of all time, including Quincy Jones, Wayne Newton, Bill Withers, and Herbie Hancock. Please welcome her to this episode. Hi, Whitney. How are you?
I am doing great. I am so happy to be here in New York after being on the road for 40 years and settling here in New York City, originally from Newton, Iowa. Thank you for having me today, Stephen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. 40 years, that's a long time to be on the road. Whoa. As I do with my show all the time, I like to go back to the very beginning. And the beginning is, as you have pointed out, you were from Newton, Iowa, which is strange in itself. But anyway, from Newton, Iowa, tell me about being born in Newton, Iowa. How did your parents get to be in Newton, Iowa?
Everyone asks me, they say, you mean there's Black people in Iowa? And I said, yes. And actually, my grandfather was Osage Indian. And they were in Oklahoma, and my grandmother in Good Time, Oklahoma. And they migrated up to Missouri and had 18 children. My father was one of 18 who became a musician with his brothers and traveled on the road. My father met my mother while he was on the road in Iowa. And so he fell in love with her so much that he decided to stop going on the road with his brothers and be with his wife. And I grew up in a very musical household because my mother played a little piano and sang, and my father played piano, guitar, tap dance, and sang. And he would sing in the local area. We were the only Black family in the whole town, and we lived just before the railroad tracks, not after. There's an important thing
Not
about
across
that.
the railroad track.
Just before the railroad tracks. And in our neighborhood was all the immigrants. It seemed like we had a Jewish family, an Italian family, a Spanish family, and us as Black and American Indian. And I didn't know I was Black until I left town. Till I ran away with the preacher's son. I really did that. I'm one of those. I really ran away with the preacher's son. Got pregnant, didn't want anybody to know, and they had me on a missing persons list for 3 months because they didn't know where I was. I just took off because I had graduated early, and I got pregnant. And I go, oh my gosh, I can't let my parents know I'm pregnant, not now. And I came back to do the Iowa State Fair because I was scheduled to sing with my sister at the Iowa State Fair. And they didn't know I was pregnant. And I had on 3 girdles. And I sang the song, Cold. No, I can't believe my heart is cold. And I said, cold. I did that. My girdle broke and my stomach came out. And my mother said, oh my God, she's pregnant. And everybody looked in Iowa, she's pregnant. And they took me off the stage like they do the Gong Show. They just like, me off the stage. And my sister was saying, how could you embarrass us like this? She said, I said, well, I don't know how it happened. Why do I know how it happened?
Now, let's go back to your growing up actually in Iowa. Tell me about your mother. You told me something about your father, but what about your mother?
My mother was a Rosicrucian. I don't know if you know that religion. She was what they call a Rosicrucian. She was very religious and spiritual. And she actually was a governess for the Maytag family. Mr. and Mrs. Newton is the home of the Maytag washing machines. And Mr. and Mrs. Maytag actually lived there. And my mother was a governess and cook for the Maytags. So I actually grew up in a mansion during the weekends, especially there all summer, playing with the kids, going in the swimming pool, the tennis courts. I had a mansion with all the rooms and stuff, and then go home to our own house, which was nice, but it wasn't the same. And so my mother she'd sang mostly in church. And when they had church in your homes, we didn't have church in a regular building. We would go to people's houses and have church.
Do you remember your first, did you go to kindergarten or did you go just to elementary school?
I went to elementary school. I did go to kindergarten, and I went to Emerson Huff School, and that school is still here to this day. And I was called Miss Chatty Cathy. I was always in the corner in the Chatty Cathy box, because Chatty in chatterbox, because I was always singing or humming or talking or yeah. And they said, we just don't understand. She's always talking. But when we find out that she really is listening, we don't understand. How can she talk and listen at the same time?
But it fits your personality because you have such a bubbly personality that I can see that's where it started at. How being the only Black in town, how was it going to school? How many people were in school?
There was 1,500 people in the whole town when I grew up. So it wasn't that big of and there might have been 20, 25 in a schoolroom, at the most, sometimes 15. And I didn't have any prejudice. I know one time they called me, one little girl said, I found out that you're you're a nigger. And I said, yeah. I didn't know that it was bad. And I said, Mom, I got a new word. I came home and said, Mom, I got a good new word of what I'm called. And she said, what's that? And I said, I'm called a nigger. And I said, isn't that nice? I had no idea. I was
What was your mother's
oblivious.
response?
Huh?
What was your mother's response?
She said, honey, you are a very intelligent young lady. And we don't go by those kind of words. Just go tell them to call you by your name.
Your mother sounds so proper. And
She was very proper.
Now, you went to elementary school, and then did you go to junior high school, or was it one of
I went to
those?
junior high. We had junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th back then. And then I
Okay.
went to senior high, and I was in all kinds I ran, I was in track, I was in the debate class, I was in the international class, I was in the pep class, I was in pep club, I was in all these clubs. And then I went to where you go work half the day and go to school half the day. I used to work at a place called Yonkers, and I worked
Was
there.
that the Deca Club?
Yeah, I was in the Deca Club.
I was also.
Were you really? Oh my gosh, that's really funny. Deca Club anymore? Oh my gosh, I was in it for several years.
And what subjects did you major in? I know you weren't in
I had
college at that time, but what was your
Yeah, you had to take
favorite
all the
subject?
requirements, and plus I did take German, and I took art, and I took music, and I was in a madrigal group. I was in the chorus, and I was a member of the art club. And to this day, I know we're going back, but to this day, I still do artwork, and I work in mixed media, and I work in string constructions, and I have stuff at BET, people with BET. I have stuff in Green Room, Stephen Colbert late night, and I have one in the National Jazz Museum of Harlem.
Now you are getting ready from high school. In your mind, what did you think that you would do as your next phase after you get out of school? I know that you ran off with the preacher's son, but you must have had some idea of what you wanted to do before that happened.
I had thought that I was just going to work at Yonkers full time, because that's what I had signed up to continue. They had me continuing on after I graduated, working in the ladies and men's sales department. And so for me, I already had a job, and that's what I was going to do. I didn't look any further than that, because my sister only went to college for 2 years. My brother only went for 2 years. He got married. My sister, I don't know, she started going on the road and she had a lot of notoriety things happen to her in her life, my sister. So I didn't really have no business of thinking I was going to go and end up with a career that I have.
Now your sister, you said she had a certain amount of well-knownness. uh, did she have a stage name that people might know?
No, I don't think so because her name was Joanne Jackson, and may she rest in peace. And she was in The Wiz. She was in Black and Blue, I think, and she got some kind of a drama log awards, couple of those. And she and I did the Gong Show together where we won. We also, she and I opened up for James Brown at Caesar's Palace. My brother was athlete. I had another brother that was played drums, and he joined us on the road when me and my sister and another girl went on the road for 5 years.
Well, I like the way you said, no, not much. And then you rattle off all the different things that people would know about. When did you run off with the preacher's son?
See, the thing about it is, I never did go to the procession. I graduated early because I had advanced credits. So I was the spring girl that graduated in the spring in January. I ran off in January and I didn't let them know until Father's Day. And I called my father on Father's Day and he was crying and they were all upset. I had a nickname. My father used to call me Cricket.
Cricket.
And he called me Cricket because Cricket rubbed their hind legs together to make music. And he said he used to call me Cricket and he used to also call me Sweeten because I love sweets. But I'm not as bad as I was, but I still love sweets.
Oh, I think that along that line we have a similarity because that's a downfall of so many of us, but particularly me because I do like sweets also. Now we're moving on through your life. You take off. Nobody hears from you till June, and you're pregnant. You're singing. What came after that?
What actually, when I got pregnant, I wasn't singing. I was just devoted my life to cooking and cleaning and taking care of my ex-husband and my son. And so that was it ended up being a little bit of a violent situation that I had to escape from. When I escaped from at one time I told my brothers he was beating me up and stuff, and my brothers came and had shotguns at the house and said, all right, we got shotguns. Small town people, we got shotguns, you can come out because we got a gun right on him. And I said, I don't want to come out, everything is fine, because I was so in love. Even though he was beating me half to death, I was still wanting to stay. They said, okay, that's it, we're never going to come and get you again. So the last time I started seeing stars when he was beating me. I said, wait a minute, this guy's choking me, killing me. He's trying to kill me. And so I got off of him. And then I waited until he went to work. And then I called my aunt and them, and they gave me a ticket and I went home. So when I got home, my father said, you are not going to sit up here and do nothing. You're either going to get a daytime job or go on the road with your sister. I chose to go on the road with my sister. And that's where my career started to launch. And we became a group called the Witches Brew. And there was 3 of us. My sister, we had another girl, we called her our sister, but she wasn't, Gwinnett. And we traveled all over all the United States and lived in Canada for 5 years and performed there on different shows. And that's where we were doing mostly R&B on this. R&B stuff. We did do some jazz, but mostly R&B, these tunes. And we opened for James Brown at Caesars, like I said, and we did Donny Hathaway, Bill Withers, Kiss. We were on the Tony Banks show. And then after I left
I want
there,
to talk about that a little bit later on because I
okay,
think that is so interesting. But you left your husband and you moved back. Where were you living at when you had to leave your husband?
I was in Moline, Illinois, the Quad Cities.
The Quad Cities. what's the distance between where you were from and where you lived at?
I would say maybe 300 to 500 miles. I don't
Okay.
really know for sure.
Now, yeah, that's unusual in itself that we're talking about Iowa and then in Illinois, because there's no familiarity other than Black folks being in Chicago or one of the
Right. Of
cities.
all places. Exactly. Exactly.
Did you have any formal training in music other than high school?
I did take lessons and all through school. I had my dad who was a singer and my mother. And but as far as formally, I was in the choirs and things like that. I did take some private lessons, but most of my private lessons weren't until I got later in life and I took privates.
Do you recall your very first performance in front of an audience?
Yes, that was the pregnant thing.
Oh, that was the first performance? Oh, that was a hell of an introduction to performing, wasn't it?
And then my second big performance was at the Kansas City Jazz Festival and with Calvin Keys and my sister. And I was shaking so bad that then they pointed at me again and said, "Look at her. Her dress is shaking. She's shaking so much. Her whole dress is just shaking, just a shaking." And I was just like this. And I was with my sister, and she finally took my dress and grabbed it like this and yanked it like this. Stop it. Nobody knew we're up there singing and she's grabbing my thing and going, "Stop shaking, stop it." And I'm like going like this. I have no idea. This woman's getting ready to kill me. Does anybody realize that?
Now, the shaking part, did it start off when you first walked on the stage in front of people?
Yeah.
You looked out and you saw, because I'm sure I'm a great singer in front of the mirror in my bathroom. But
Yeah.
that's it.
It's different. Like they had that little Blue Ivy with Beyonce, and she got up and had her on stage, and they said Jay-Z said I could tell that she was nervous, and Beyonce was saying I should have never done this. What am I doing? But the people couldn't tell. We couldn't tell that the little girl was nervous, but she later said she was almost ready to throw up. She was so nervous. But the thing with me is the shaking part. It started when I started taking those steps. I started shaking. And then it got really bad when we started singing. Oh, it was terrible. And we sang in 2-part harmony. I also had leads too. So it was an experience.
Who was the first major singer that you all collaborated with or part of the bill with?
As a group, I would say the Donny Hathaway, those people,
Did you get to meet Johnny
Bill
Hathaway?
Withers and Kiss. We opened for Donny Hathaway and Kiss and Bill Withers. And those were like the most famous people. And in that period. I did later work with Herbie and Quincy and different people.
But what I want to know is, how was it working with Donny Hathaway?
They were a genius. I worked just before that, by the way. I forgot to mention. We did a thing with Ike Turner,
Oh,
and they came and picked us up in a white Bentley and took us to the studio. And he had fired the other background singers because we did background also because we could do all this harmony, right? And we got in there, and there he was. I'll never forget it, in a brown bathrobe, sitting at the controls, doing his whatevers. I'm not even going to say what that was. And so we got in there, and then we're in the booth, and there comes Tina flying into the control room, doing all this stuff. We don't know what she was talking about. And then he said, "One moment, please." And then she was like screaming and all that. And so finally she left, and we did the session. But unfortunately, I hate to mention this, but it is the truth. We got paid. His associate came up to me and asked me to give him head. And I'll pause for a moment in case you have to delete that. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, we know who we're talking about. If you do it good for me, then he wants you to do it to him. And I said, oh my God, no. And I went flying out of the room, and I went and told my sister, and she said, that's it. She said, we're leaving. And he says, we're not going to take you home in the Bentley. And my sister said, we don't give it, you know what? And so we left out of there. And that was my experience working with Ike Turner. But he was a genius while working in the studio. Just incredible.
I have a funny follow-up to that. There's somebody that I have to introduce you to if you don't know her. Do you know Shelley Clark White? I had her on a show 2 years ago on this show, and Shelley was one of the founders and original members of Honeycomb. You remember Honeycomb? Well, she also was a backup singer, Ike Turner.
Wow.
Ike Turner. She's still singing with the Honeycomb, but her husband is Verdine White from the Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And she said that someone called her up and wanted her to be the backup singer to Ike Turner, Ike and Tina Turner. And she needed to be ready tomorrow, the next day, to fly out. So she said she flew out and got there and got her room, and all of a sudden there was a knock on the door, and Ike Turner was there with his bags. Said that he was going to move in to the room with her. And she said, no, you're not.
He wanted to move in with her?
In her room for that night.
Oh no. And brought his bags too.
Brought bags too. So
that's
I'm
funny.
going to introduce the two of you all together, because I'm sure you all have wonderful stories to tell.
That will be
fun. Okay, now you were talking about Donny Hathaway.
Donny Hathaway was a genius. He said people didn't understand him. He was a musical genius, and he was writing stuff right in front of us. He said he was another one that indulged in things. And he was saying how people didn't understand him. He said, they think I've tried to kill myself. He said, I didn't try to kill myself. He said, I don't know why people think that. That's not what happened. He more or less said that, let's just say it this way. He thought it was more or less climbing into bed and climbed out the window type thing.
After saying that he didn't do that, he went and did that.
He was feeling no pain. So his death, his demise might have been not, they try to say that he jumped out the window. And I think maybe his demise wasn't that he voluntarily or was even pushed. He, in his imagination, thought he was doing something else.
I see. How many did you spend a lot of time, or just a tour?
That was just I think it was a week tour, 2 or 3 days at a place called Oil Can Harry's in Vancouver. And that's where we were the main act in the main room at times. And then sometimes we opened up for the main act. They had 3 different rooms, and upstairs was the jazz room where Les McCann used to perform. And we would go up and
compared to what him and Eddie did that compared to what?
I love that song. And I have to tell you a story about Les McCann off book. I don't dare say it on the podcast.
Okay. You are around what period of time is this, so that the audience get because when did Donny Hathaway die? It was in the 70s, wasn't it?
So this was before I joined Wayne Newton. I joined Wayne Newton in 1978 or 77. So it must have been just before 1977.
Okay. Did you
just
go
before then?
And you were in Canada, and then when you joined Wayne Newton, you went to Las Vegas?
No, I was in Los Angeles. See, I traveled a lot. And I was in Los Angeles. After the group broke up after 5 years, we went back to Los Angeles. And then that's when we were studio singers. And that's where I worked for Quincy and worked in Herbie's. He had this club. We always thought he owned it, but he was actually in partnership with somebody. And I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll think of it later. I did Mr. Gadget, you know, that cartoon thing. I'm singing on that, singing
You were
background
on
on
that? Okay.
that. Yeah, yeah. And then we did a couple of things. We did the Gong Show, and we won. But that was the first Gong Show with Chuck Barris or whatever his name is,
Yes.
and that was like the first one. You can't even find half of those archives. And yeah, so that was what happened. That was in the early 70s
Early 70s.
or mid 70s, mid 70s, mid 70s.
So in between Donny Hathaway and Wayne Newton, you work with Quincy Jones. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I did. I worked with Quincy in the studio. I knew this drummer by the name of James Gatson, and he's still alive. He's a drummer. Played on everybody, Stevie's, you name it. He was the drummer. And he was a friend of mine. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing today?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Quincy needs a background singer real quick. Are you available?" I said,
Duh.
"Yeah." So I went in there and Quincy goes, "All right, you're going to do this by ear. We want you to sing 3 different harmonies because I can sing all these harmonies." He says, "If you don't do it right, we're going to give you a pink slip." I was scared to death. So I went in there, I did it. And I can't tell you to this day if it was on a Michael Jackson song or what song it was, because when you're doing oohs and ahs and those, you have no idea what song you're on. And so I got done and I said, he didn't say anything. He goes, "Thank you very much." I go, "He just said thank you. That was all." And so I said, "Am I getting a pink slip?" He said, "No, you did a great job. We're going to keep it." But it's the thing of, I don't know what song it was. And that was the crazy thing in singing background on all these. We never got credit. We got paid cash. Check. Are you kidding me? Even Mr. Gadget, even if it was just $500 or whatever, it was still cash. We didn't get credit. It didn't go through the union back then.
Okay. Did you ever do any more work with Quincy? Or that
It was
was
just when that, because what happened was there was so much going on back then. I was walking down the street in my hot pants. You got to hear the story. This is around the same time. In my red hot pants, carrying a Bible, because one of my friends that had worked with us, she had a baby, and I was getting ready to go and take a gift. These guys stop me and they go, "Hey, you want to meet Stevie Wonder?" And I go, "I'm from Iowa. I'm a little girl in California, Los Angeles. I don't know. I'm on La Brea and Hollywood, on La Brea, get ready to go down towards Sunset." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm Stevie's brother." I said, "Okay." So we go to this hotel and we go in the room and there's all these people in the room. And then out comes Stevie from the back. He goes, "All right, everybody get in the cars. We're going to my house." I go, "What? This is insane." I said, "Am I being kidnapped and I don't know it?" And there was like a groupies, like a fan club. And I would say there was like 10 of us. And we got into a couple of cars and we drove to his house. And that's when his wife had just had the baby. And Isn't She Lovely was the
Yes, yes,
Life
yes.
is Aisha or whatever. He played pool. I don't know how that man played pool blind. They fed us. We had greens and all kinds of chitlins. They had all kinds of food in there. And then so he had his Fender Rhodes by the pool. And he says, "Oh, you're a singer? Okay, sing something." And I did this Minnie Riffleton stuff. I go, "I can do my Minnie Riffleton." He goes, "Wow, you're really good." He said, "I might have to call you sometime for a gig." So when he did offer me a gig, he said, "Would you like to sing with me sometime?" I said, "Sure." But all I can say is back then I had an offer to sing with Ray Charles. I had an offer to sing with Stevie Wonder and an offer to sing with Wayne Newton. Who was paying the most money? Wayne Newton. So I went with him. because the brothers, they only had a limited amount of salary.
Wow. We're off to sing with Wayne Newton. That eye is on you now.
That was an experience that I'll never forget the rest of my life. He taught me so much. I was in my early 20s. I don't want to give up my age here, but let's say I was 23 or something like that. So I was really, I know, right? Everybody's gonna add it up pretty
You know
soon.
what the year it was, because you already said about what time it was. So if it's
I know.
you gotta go.
I try to lie about my stage. My Facebook don't even say my real age. Sometimes I forget what my real age really is. But so working with Wayne was great. I got the job because I had did a job with Frida Payne at a place called the Tropicana Hotel, and I sang background. Well, I got pregnant again, and I had to go
How that
home.
happened? What did you do to have that to happen?
That thing about country girls, they just do not know how to cross their legs. Terrible. And I had a friend who worked with Dean Martin. Her name is Joyce Garrow, and she was one of the gold diggers. And then my sister was working at the Aladdin or somewhere in Vegas on the Strip, and they had all these strip ties. And they said Wayne Newton's working for a singer. So I met Wayne and they said I was too fat, and I only weighed. I was in a size 8 dress, so I didn't think I was too fat. And so anyway, I got the job with Frida, and they went and scouted and heard me and came back and offered me the job. But he wanted me to lose a little weight. And I did, I lost weight. But he gave me a 30-minute spot on the show. I had a duet with him. I had a solo spot where I would sing like a Ray Charles song or a Donna Summer song or whatever. And then I also sang background. It was very hard because we worked 7 days a week.
You moved from Los Angeles and then you go to Las Vegas to sing with him?
Yeah. Okay. And it was really hard work because his shows were 2.5 hours. And we did 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week, 42 weeks out of the year. And it was very rigorous. I don't know how he could maintain his stamina like he did, but it was incredible. And we had such great opportunities. I met so many people, from Steve and Edie, from Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra gave me some vocal tips. He told me an exercise about swimming across the pool and holding your breath for long notes and different things. Sammy Davis Jr. I have so many stories. Elvis, I met Elvis several times. Tom Jones. Rod Stewart tried to steal me from Wayne, and Wayne wasn't having it. It was like I was a musical slave or something. Rod said, I want her. And Wayne says, no, you can't have her. And I met a lot of people, and Judy Garland. It was just incredible. We did the Tonight Show, the Merv Griffin Show, the Dinah Shore Show, the SeaWorld special. Ruth Buzzy was crazy, and Don Rickles was nuts, and I knew him really well. And the memories were just incredible. And you get all that information, Steve, and you get all that information, and you don't realize what you're soaking in until later when you're talking to people or you're going to events or you're in another school. I'm in school and I go, wait a minute, I know this because Sammy told me this, or Mel Torme told me about scatting like that. And so it was just Nancy Wilson. I was only there 4 years, and I left because of some personal reasons, and I quit the job. I actually asked him if he would fire me. It was back in the day when there was a lot of stuff going on. And I'll never forget when Sammy says Frank Sinatra is the one that got Sammy so he could stay on the Strip. He used to stay at a place called the Moulin Rouge. And Frank said, this is crazy. The man is working on the Strip and you're having him stay across the tracks. That was across the tracks at the Moulin Rouge. So Frank said, you know what? I'm not going to perform anymore unless you let him do it. And Sammy said, the funny thing about it all is we still had to come through the back door, come through the kitchen to go to the shows. But at least I can still stay on the Strip.
Did you know Margaret Bush Ware? Margaret she works with me now on a project that we're doing. I'm the president of a organization called A Soulful Heart, memorializing George Floyd Jr. But Margaret, during that particular time that you were talking, was Sammy Davis's personal assistant. That's
Oh, she
why.
probably knows me then. She probably knows me, and I probably know her. Or she remembers my name, Slick. I went by my nickname was
Slick.
Yeah, Wayne used to call me Slick on stage, and because he couldn't say Marchell, because my real name is Marchell Jackson, and every time he said Marchell, it was Marshall or it was some other name than Marchell, and
Oh,
he
by the
he
way,
nicknamed everybody. I think it's incredible what you've done for it. Just to give you a little bit of insight of when I'm looking at your podcast, Stephen, I think it's incredible what you have done for the community and for George Floyd and for Blackness and helping people in need. You are just I don't know, you're such a pioneer. And I just wanted to give you your flowers and tell you thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, you left Wayne Newton. But I want to ask you, I heard stories about people, performers, particularly Black performers who performed in Las Vegas, and while they are welcome to sing and dance and everything else, they still had to come in through the side door. How was your experiences at that time?
See, what they don't understand, and that's what something that Sammy said jokingly. He says, I still have to go through the kitchen to go to the showroom. That everybody did. You didn't enter the audience where the audience is to get on stage. So in the hotels, the best way to go for security purposes was to go through the kitchen and then go to the stage, or go through the side door and go on the stage. Now, I don't know about their experience in Las Vegas, but I didn't have that problem. And by the time I got there, they weren't having those kind of issues in Vegas. So I only knew one incident that happened that I don't really want to talk about on the podcast. But there's people like Dorothy Dandridge that got kicked out of the pool at Caesar's Palace. And it happened to several of us, something like that, because they say they're going to drain the pool. And maybe you're the only Black person in there and everyone else is white. And why are they draining the pool? But that was back in the day. Things have changed since then.
Now, when you left Wayne Newton, was that when you came to New York, or you made another stop someplace else?
I made several stops. After I left Wayne, I went back to Los Angeles. Oh, no, I went to Hawaii. And I worked at this place called the Ely Kai Hotel. And I worked there 6 months. And I sang, go back. I became a platter after I left Wayne.
A platter?
And I was a platter for 3 months. And what happened? I got pregnant again. And I'm up there singing, doing the doo-wahs or whatever at Harrah's in Reno. And by the way, do you know Danny Mixon? He's a piano player.
Yes.
Danny Mixon was performing with Ben Vereen, and he wasn't playing piano. He was tap dancing. And people don't know that Danny Mixon is a tap dancer and was a very good tap dancer and tap danced on Ben Vereen's show. And so we were there, and I was singing, and I don't know if you can see this, but I'm singing, and I put my leg up like this, and I couldn't get it down. And so I go off the stage. They go, get off, and I go off the stage like this, like they think that's part of the show, right? It wasn't part of the show. For some reason, I couldn't get my leg down. And so they go, take her to the doctor, the hotel doctor. And he takes me down, and he stretches out my leg, and he feels me, and he goes, you're pregnant. The guy says, you're a chiropractor. What do you know? You're just a chiropractor. He said, I might be a chiropractor, but I know when somebody's pregnant. He said, we have all this woman is pregnant. He said, what? We're supposed to sing for the Queen Elizabeth next week. He goes, she ain't gonna be able to wait till next week or in 2 weeks. It was in 2 weeks. He said, she's not gonna, she must be at least 5 months. What was I, 3 months or 8 weeks or whatever. I was at the deadline. And he says, she's gonna have, if she's gonna keep that baby, that's fine. But if she's gonna get an abortion, she's gonna have to get it now. So I missed my opportunity singing for the Queen Elizabeth with the Platters. They were mad. And the guy, they always cook in the rooms, in the hotel room back then. Everybody was cooking. And the guy was like so mad. He goes, you're messing up my black eyed peas or some kind of stuff. But that was back then when I left Wayne, I went to Platters. And there were so many groups of Platters, several groups of Platters. And so after that, I got a job singing in Hawaii at the Ilikai Hotel for 6 months. And there I also did the ABC Superstars games. I don't know if you're familiar. That's where all these athletes get together and they do all these games.
Very well.
Yeah, I was the girl. I was a hostess, and I worked with the guy Tally Ho for the volleyball. And then I met Joe Montana. I met Reggie Jackson. And Joe Montana let me wear his medal all day. I just love that. And then he goes, you can wear this all day, but you got to give it back. And I gave it back. Then he gave me a medal. And for me, he was famous, but I'm a girl. I knew Herschel Walker. All those guys were there. I lost that medal.
Oh, boy.
I don't know what happened to that medal.
It would be worth a whole bunch of money now.
Can you imagine? I lost a stupid medal. So anyway, I was there 6 months and then I left. And then I went back to LA again. It seems like I always kept going back to LA. Did some more session work and did a thing with, what's this guy's name? Oh, I can't remember his name. Anyway, I worked with several people doing background and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? I want to do my own thing. I've been doing all this background and just a little bit. I want to do my own thing. So I'm leaving. Surprise, they had an earthquake. And my sister was up in the room and she was like 250 pounds. She said, I'm not getting out of the bed. If the building falls down, I'd rather be in the bed than trying to walk and it fall down on me. I said, I'm leaving. And I took my stuff and I left LA. And I went to Nashville. No, I went to Atlanta, Georgia. And then I lived there for 3.5 years and did all these shows and festivals and stuff on my own. It was really nice. And then I went to Nashville, and that was an experience. I lived on Music Row for a while. They were really nice to me, but there was a sense of prejudice there. But when you're a girl, it was strange because when you're a woman, being around the KK people and all that stuff, it was a little bit different than how they treated the men. I sang a song called Dixie. You know that song? Oh, I wish I was in the land. And I thought it was a beautiful song. And I wanted to sing it in Nashville for this contest because you could get $50 for the first prize. And then if you win the next time, you get 75, then 100. So I said, I got to do this. I need the money. And they said, she wants to sing Dixie. And the guy says, we're going to have a meeting about that. So about 4 of them went in the back and they had a meeting whether they were going to let this Black girl sing Dixie. It's our national anthem. She has no right singing it. You could hear one guy in the back. She has no right. That nigger has no right singing our song. And the other guy said, let her sing her. My God, let her sing. She's a pretty little thing. You could hear them talking all this. And they were talking like, I could hear them. They didn't care if I could hear them. If Black people can't hear, I don't know what the deal was. So I sang it and I actually won the contest. And I said, isn't that something though? But then listen to this. I came back. After you won, you get to come back. He said, you only got to sing Dixie once. Don't sing it again. And they wouldn't let me sing it again. Isn't that something?
So now you asked Nashville. Is that when you come to New York, or There's another stop.
I got that twisted around. I went to Nashville first, then I went to Atlanta, Georgia. And then Atlanta, Georgia is when I got robbed in Atlanta, Georgia. And they came to my house and they were going around. I'm going to tell this quick story. I don't know how much time you have. They were going around and robbing people's homes in Atlanta. And I said, and it was a little Cubby soul. And they said, you're going to be next. I said, really? I said, okay. I had a Derringer. I used to carry a 25 shooter. And I used to have a dress with a holster underneath my dress. And I had my 25 shooter in my holster in my dress. And I would walk around like all the time with my gun on me. That was my thing. And I said, oh, they're going to come and rob me. So I put a suit out. And I had a men's suit from my ex-boyfriend. I put that out, put a note on it, said, you can have this. I put a note on the refrigerator, said, you can eat anything you want. I said, here's the TV, you can take that, but if you take it, there's a tracer on it. And I said, and so I left. I didn't know. I just did that stuff. I came back and the door was open and I could hear some rumbling around and I could hear somebody going out, getting ready, trying to go out my kitchen window. I went and got my gun and I shot him in the butt and they kept on running. I don't know if I hit him or not. And I said, you know what? That's it. I'm leaving Atlanta. And then that's when I left Atlanta. And my cousin, who's Patience Higgins, said, come to New York. That's enough. You've been through enough. Come to New York. You can stay with me for a while. And so I went to Patience. He said, all right, you're not leaving my apartment. I go, why? He said, you're going to sit here and you're going to listen to Billie Holiday every day until I, and I had to stay in Patience's apartment and listen to Billie Holiday all day long for days.
Patience. The last time I saw Patience was maybe 4 months ago at the Bedford-Stuyvesant, right on Fulton Street, Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Center.
Oh, the Restoration Center, yeah.
Yeah. But before that, he actually performed at someone that I know's house that I went to. At the house, it reminds you of the Harlem and days of when the salons were in people's homes. Margaret Troop does.
Oh yeah, I used to love going to those things. We had so much fun going those parlor events.
Yeah, yes. So now Patience in Rome, Neil.
Yeah, I love Rome.
Do you sing jazz or you sing R&B?
I'm mostly jazz now. And in school at Berkeley, we have to do R&B tunes once in a while because it's required a piece. But once in a while I might do Isn't She Lovely on the show, along with Nika Dreams or Giant Steps or Ain't Nobody's Business. I try to do it up, but I don't do as much. Maybe per show just one, maybe two. And I still put, if I do New York State of Mind, I swing it. Some folks like to get away, make a holiday. I swing it. So if I do an R&B tune, I usually swing it. I don't ever do it exactly like it was recorded.
Have you done things on the Jazzmobile? For Jazzmobile?
I did back in the day. I did a couple of things. You could see me. I sang at one of their anniversaries. I think a 50th anniversary. They had me at some church. And I sang at another event with Antoinette Montague and Danny Mixon and them. I sang on another event for that. And then I sang at the church, the Abyssinian church. I did a big show with that. So I've done like 4 of them, maybe.
You have done so much. What are your future plans? I know, and I want to mention this because it fits right into progress despite obstacles. One of the things that attracted to me to do for you doing the show is because even at this late stage in life,
you just didn't know how to say it. I'll say it for you. Now that you're so seasoned.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. Now that you're so seasoned, you're going back to school. Tell us about your school.
I had 30 students, private students here in New York. And we're talking about, I did the Blue Note already. I've done Carnegie Hall already. I've done the Apollo, United Nations, I've done Mittens, I've done Cotton Club, I've done all these places. I've sung with Petey Bridgewater. I've done a lot. And I said, it's the pandemic, or how you say it. I have 30 students. One of my students made, by the way, she made Tina in one of the starring roles in Tina. I had another one made Harriet. Vondi Curtis Hall was my student for a while, and he was in the movie Harriet, and he sang in that. And then
he
I
was in
had,
Coming to America.
huh?
And he was in Coming to America.
Yeah, but when I was working with him, it was the movie Harriet. And then I have a woman, Chanel Jones. They call her Lady Luck. She is the great niece of the Sugar Hill Gang Records label. She got a platinum. So all my students are more, what I'm saying, are doing really well. Hit songs and stuff like that. All right, so then COVID comes. And during COVID, I said, I get a check from unemployment for $4,000 or something of this back pay that they owe you. And I go, what am I going to do with this money? I said, I have nothing to do. I don't hardly have any students anymore. And that's when I decided to go back to school, and I could do it at Berkeley online. Within my travels, there was a time when I was in Singapore. I went to the Yamaha School of Music there. I studied at Kaufman. I studied in Des Moines. I studied in Rochester, because I left New York, I went to Rochester and came back. And I went to Eastman and taught at Eastman and did several of their TV shows and stuff there. But the thing about it is, when you do all this stuff, you're performing and all this stuff, sometimes your grades don't transfer. And I had 40 credits at Eastman, and they didn't transfer because it was a junior college school of music, a community school of music. So they didn't transfer. So I only got like 20 credits from another school. So I said, I'm sick of this. I need to get a degree. I haven't been able to get a degree because we're traveling so much. And I have gone back to Berkeley online, and they have honored me so much. They did a on-campus magazine interview of me. They did me an online interview of me. They let me help teach a class. And it's just been really great. And I'm learning stuff, because you get in old habits. But also I've had to correct them on a couple of things that I knew from personal knowledge. Like just the other day, we were doing, what's the guy's name? Mingus. And she didn't know, she's the instructor, but she didn't know Sue Mingus was dead. And they're talking about Mingus. And she's talking about her as if she's alive. And I said, she passed. She said, oh, I didn't know that. And just little things like that from your own personal knowledge that you're able to interject into the school. And I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of work, though. I've been an A student. This is my last year. I have 20 some credits left, but these last years, it's getting rough. I don't know I could stay on that dean's list this year, next year.
You're gonna make it. You have the fortitude and you have the knowledge. So I congratulate you for that. And I congratulate you for your career, because I know it's not easy out there, and you have risen to the top. And the worst thing is that people don't know as much as they need to know in terms of your career and what you've done. And I thank you for it. And I thank you for being on this broadcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And I want to also add to the fact that my son did pass. His name was Dean Williams. He passed 3 years ago. But I have 3 albums out that you can go and check on my website, www.whitneymarchell.com. That's MARCHELLE, WhitneyMarchell.com. And I have 3 albums out, which are smooth jazz and straight ahead jazz. And my most recent album is called Strong Black Women, that has Brandy Younger on it, Lee Bridgewater, Vondi Curtis Hall, Felicia Collins from the Late Show. What's the guy's name with the bald head? What's his name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, the piano player. Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, Paul
I
Schaefer.
can't remember his name. Paul Schaefer. She was the guitar player and singer in Paul Schaefer's band on the Late Show. She had the real long dress. But anyway, there's a lot of great people on the album, on this latest album. So make sure you check it out.
Okay. And that's it for the show about stuff. See you at the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in this week. Hope you enjoyed this show about stuff. See you next time.